So just a few comments before we go back into the practice. So in this practice of resting in awareness, again, it's more about being than doing. And it's, from that perspective, it's more about discovering than cultivating. In fact, Alan Wallace mentioned this yesterday in his book. He said, when he's talking about this practice, he says, here the practice is not so much one of developing attentional stability and clarity, as it is of discovering the stillness and luminosity inherent in awareness itself. But how do we know if we're practicing this correctly or not, this practice? If we're focusing on any appearance, we're distracted. And if we're simply blank, with no awareness, then we're in dullness. So to correctly practice it, in terms of no distraction, means not paying attention to any appearance. And in terms of not having dullness, means to maintain awareness, to be aware of being aware. And I want to add one more thing to the practice that you may find useful, particularly to help with this sort of dullness and distraction. And that is the gaze. If we find that we're getting agitated, tense, or distracted, then it can be helpful to lower the gaze slightly. Or if we're finding that we're becoming dull and drowsy and just blank, then elevate the gaze a bit. So that's something we can adjust depending on what's happening in the practice. So let's go back into the practice now. And then after the meditation, a few more points I want to mention about the practice. So again, maybe we can switch the lights off for the meditation. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. And relaxing more deeply with each out-breath. And with each out breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen, happily releasing them. And allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. And simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. Allowing the eyes to be at least partially open, resting your gaze in the space in front of you. And simply release all appearances and allow the mind to come to rest. Not doing anything at all. Simply knowing that you're aware. If you find yourself getting caught up in any agitation, tension or distraction, lower your gaze, release your awareness into space, releasing all appearances and relaxing completely. And if you find yourself falling into dullness, drowsiness, or simply having a blank mind, elevate your gaze and sharpen your focus, knowing that you're aware. And simply rest in that open, spacious stillness of awareness. just a few more points. In this practice, one quite common experience is the arising of fear. And the reason for that is normally our sense of identity is constantly being reinforced by two things. One, solid sense of body. This is me. And then also mental activity. All our thoughts, memories, emotions, everything that's going on in our mind, which usually is constant, is constantly reinforcing our sense of personal identity. But in this practice, if we sit down and we prepare the body well, the posture well, then often this solid sense of body can dissolve. And then when we're resting in awareness, and particularly if the mind goes a little bit quiet, then suddenly there's nothing mentally that's reinforcing our sense of identity. So then the two things that are reinforcing a sense of me have completely dropped away. And then often, because of that, the most common reaction to that is fear, existential fear, like I don't exist or I'm going out of existence. But this fear is completely irrational. There's nothing to fear in resting in open, spacious stillness of awareness. Because the only thing going out of existence is a false sense of me. And according to Buddhism, it's exactly that false sense of me that is the root cause of all of our mental afflictions and suffering. And so also Alan Wallace, in his book Attention Revolution, mentions this on page 100. He says the following: one of the more common challenges in this practice is the emergence of fear. As you release your grip on the contents of the mind, you are undermining your normal sense of personal identity, which is constantly reinforced by thinking, by recalling and identifying with your personal history, hopes and plans. Now you are disengaging from these familiar supports for substantiating your ego. As lapses between thoughts occur more and more frequently and for longer periods, your awareness hovers in a kind of empty space, a vacuum devoid of personhood. You may come into the grip of fear as your normal sense of who you are loses its footing. The teacher Glen Rinpoche warned his students that such dread may well arise during their training. It is crucial, he counselled, not to identify with it nor give it any credence. Some kinds of fear are based in reality. They protect us from danger, filling the body with energy so that we can flee or protect ourselves in whatever way necessary. But this kind of dread with no clear object has no such basis in reality. There is no danger in the empty, luminous space of awareness. You have nothing to lose but your false sense of an independent, controlling ego. The only thing being threatened is an illusion. If you don't identify with it, then there's nothing to fear. If you do identify with the fear, it may bring your entire practice to a grinding halt and throw you into deep emotional imbalances. So it is of utmost importance to observe such fear without distraction, without grasping. Keep to the essentials of the practice. So I'm going to talk a little